What's up, y'all? Welcome to Nitty Gritty Sports. We're starting a new series today. We're going through college football and giving teams grades based off their last season's performance and then talking a little bit about their schedule and what they need to fix in the offseason to improve. Starting off, we're going to break down my team, the Tennessee Volunteers. All Volunteer fans know that we've had a rough patch of years these last, 5, 6, 7 years with coaches and athletic directors leaving. We're not even going to talk about Butch Jones and Jeremy Pruitt today, but do we have the answer with Josh Heupel? We're gonna sit here and tell you all that today. So we're gonna go first talk about the schedule and then offense and defense, and then give a final grade. So Drew, go ahead, tell us a little bit about their schedule and how their season went.
Yeah, so Tennessee finished 7-6, and a lot of people had them predicted. All the articles I would look at preseason, I would sometimes look at the prediction for the regular season. A lot of people had Tennessee going 6-6. They actually got 7 wins, and they actually had some decent wins, I think. And the losses they had, they just played, teams that were just really good and a lot better. They started off with the win on Bowling Green, and then lost to Pitt. Pitt ended up being a really good team. Then the one over Tennessee Tech, and then they lost to Florida. Now you look at that Florida game. At the moment, that didn't really seem like a terrible loss. A lot of people kind of expected Florida to kind of run the table with that game. But looking back now, I think that's a game Tennessee should have won. Tennessee plays Florida, Alabama, and Georgia each year, and it just seems like they can never get the win over one of those teams. I would think Tennessee would love to go and replay that game. I think Tennessee would get the win. They had good wins over Missouri and South Carolina. Now, Missouri and South Carolina aren't great teams, but these are teams that Tennessee has struggled with over the past few years. And not only did they beat them handedly. They dominated those games. And a lot of people started to kind of turn their eyes towards Tennessee, like, okay, did they start figuring something out here? So those are really good wins. And then Ole Miss, that game was a little unfortunate for them. It was a well-played game by Tennessee. Ole Miss is a pretty good team, and for Tennessee to only lose by 5 points, I think you kind of got to take that as a little bit of a moral win for them. Obviously, Alabama, that game didn't go their way, 52-24, and then they played Kentucky, and I thought that Kentucky win was Tennessee's best win all season. Kentucky's a good team, and they're going to be a legitimate team going forward in the future. We'll talk a little bit more about Kentucky when we do their regular season grade. Obviously, lost to Georgia, 41-17. Again, Tennessee's just a couple years away from being able to compete with teams like that. And then closed out with 2 wins against South Alabama and Vanderbilt. Unfortunately, they lost to Purdue in the Music City Bowl. That was a great game, and they got robbed in the ending of that. I did a video over that game, and I really think Tennessee should have won. But overall, it was a really good season for Tennessee, I think, after what all they've lost the transfer portal, new coaching staff. I think the potential is definitely there.
I think you're spot on with the Florida game. Tennessee would love to have that one back. But I think the win over Kentucky and the loss to Florida shows how the Tennessee team grew as the season went on with Josh Heupel running the helm. I really think Josh Heupel did a good job keeping the team in check and keeping them focused on the goal and keeping them bought in throughout the season. And I think they really improved towards the end of the game in the Music City Bowl, where we got absolutely robbed. It was a terrible way to end a good season, I thought. We should have won that bowl game. We're not going to talk about that. All right, transitioning into the offense this year, big change from what we're used to seeing in the SEC even. Josh Heupel coming in and really focusing and emphasizing on tempo and pace. He said this season multiple times that tempo trumps alignment. So, we were running some questionable things, against some defenses that were probably set up for it, but it worked like he predicted due to the tempo. This year, they didn't like to run plays or run drives over 12 plays. Once they got to that 11 or 12 play mark, they would take a shot downfield and try and get it into the end zone. So a lot different from what we're used to seeing with this high-paced offense. They had 275 passing yards a game, which was 39th in college football. Good for Tennessee, helping them get an identity on offense or defense. I think that's part of what we've been struggling with. We haven't had an identity. We've had these good players, Alvin Kamara, Marquez Callaway's in the NFL, balling now, Juwan Jennings. So we've had pieces on offense. We've just never had an identity. But Josh Heupel is helping us bring that. We also had 218 rushing yards a game, which is huge. Small stepped up and played great in the second half of the season. I think really fitting into the offense well. And 40 points per game, which, is great. So, I think Josh Heupel has helped bring in an identity. It's showing with the transfer portal now. Players are starting to come in to this Tennessee offense, receivers and tight ends especially, because they want to get the ball and score points, So I think it's a good thing for Tennessee.
Yeah, the offense for Tennessee looked really good this past season. It was a new scheme that hasn't really been seen much in the SEC, with teams running high tempo offenses, no huddle. Teams do go fast paced, but the way Tennessee was doing it, they took it a step further. I mean, as soon as the play is over, they're already getting to the ball, lining up and running another play, and that was their game plan all the way through. And really what they were trying to do was really just have those 3 or 4 breakout plays where the defense isn't lined up, and then they just bomb them over top, and that's how they would get their points. That's why you would see so many drives for Tennessee be 5 plays or less, because they're trying to run that offense, and they're trying to get that one play where the defense isn't lined up correctly, and then that's how they get them. Now, as far as running an offense like that, it's great, but your defense is going to be on the field a lot of the game. And with that being said, they're going to give up some points. And it doesn't help when Tennessee already lost a lot of their last year's starters on defense to the transfer portal. And then the talent was just lacking on Tennessee defense to begin with. And when you have that, as well as they had the defense on the field most of the game, their defense struggled. They had multiple games that they gave up 40 plus points. And as much as their defense didn't play well, it's kind of hard to really have a defense in a system like that when you're running an offense that's high tempoed, that you can expect them to hold them to teams to 20 or 30 points a night. So their linebackers for Tennessee was probably the biggest flaw they had. Although their linebackers would rack up some good stats and they led the SEC in tackles for loss, their containment was terrible. Aiden, I'm sure you've watched a lot of the games. The containment and the intermediate passing game, a lot of teams would go after the middle of the field what the linebackers were. And that's how a lot of those teams would get a lot of yards. So those chunk plays right down the middle of the field. What do you have to say about their defense?
Their linebackers are inexperienced, and that definitely showed. They're good, great side-to-side lateral movement, but teams could run up the middle, gap scheme runs, gashing us up the middle with things like power, and then the play action, they would bite so hard. And the biggest thing for me with the Tennessee defense is open field tackling and missed tackles. There is way too many times that there's a guy wrapped up 2-3 yards past the line of scrimmage by one guy, and the other defensive players will either stop pursuing and the guy will miss the tackle and he'll go for 10, 15 more yards. Or it'll be an open field, a receiver will catch a ball 10, 15 yards down the field, and none of our DBs can make a play. Alontae Taylor, we're losing him, which is going to be huge going into next season. He was by far our best DB. And without him, the defensive backs, it's really lacking. And the D-line is the strong suit of the defense. Our pass rush could get back there really well sometimes during the season, but without coverage over top, if the pass rush can't get there, we're getting torched. 275 passing yards a game we gave up, which is not good at all, especially when you're playing in the SEC. Giving up those numbers, there's really no excuse. Yeah, the linebackers play is definitely lacking for sure. Going in the next season, hopefully these guys will get better. But Jeremy Banks at 6'1", 220, I would argue he's probably a little too small to be an SEC linebacker. With that said, he did have 128 total tackles, but way too many missed tackles by him personally. He can't get off some blocks sometimes, and he just gets blocked downfield. So Tennessee has to get better at their linebacker play specifically if they want to get better.
Yeah, no one really expects Tennessee to have a great great defense holding teams to 20 and 10 points a game. The system they run on offense, they're meant to just outscore teams. It's just when Tennessee can figure out a way to slow down the other offenses, not necessarily completely shut them down, that's where you'll see Tennessee start competing with more of the top 5 schools. Because it doesn't matter who they play. I think Tennessee is capable of putting up 20 and 30 points, and I think next season a lot of people are going to expect that offense to be a little bit better. My only concern is when you run an offense like that, it works really well when teams don't expect it. This was the first year that Tennessee came out and ran this offense. No one saw it coming really, and it worked against teams that haven't really prepared for it. But with the offseason now, with teams playing Tennessee and having a game under the belt, playing against a system like that, I feel like a lot of teams are going to be a lot more prepared and are going to practice that kind of situation a little bit more. So when they come out and Tennessee's running that high-tempo offense, teams will be more prepared and ready to defend it. So that's really going to be interesting to watch in the next season.
Yeah. The defensive struggles. Here's what I would say about the defensive struggles you just mentioned, and I agree they're not going to give up 10 or 20 or less points. but you got to bend but don't break. You can give up field goals. If your team's going to be putting up 40, 50 points a game or putting up 40, 50 points in a night, all you got to do is just stop the other team from scoring 6. The red zone defense has to improve. Tennessee loves to run cover 0 in the red zone, and with the corners, like I just mentioned, they play press coverage. They bite too hard on the inside move, and they'll get beat over top. It happens way too often, especially if you're going to be running cover 0 in the red zone. And also turnovers. Turnovers are huge. You see players in the NFL now are starting to go for strips and punching the ball out and changing the whole game off of their turnovers. So the turnover game and red zone defense, if that could improve, that would help Tennessee. That might help them win 3 more games. I mean, we saw they beat a 10-3 Kentucky team towards the end of the season. So the upside on them is great. And I would argue also against with you saying that offense will be easier to go against after seeing it for a year. Josh Heupel is going to put more layers into this offense going in. That was just level 1 of his offense. Next year, there's going to be a whole different set of tricks that he's going to have up his sleeves and schemes and passing concepts and run concepts for these defenses. And with this high-powered offense and up-tempo and them throwing all these passing touchdowns over the top, they still had a really balanced attack. They still had a really good run game. And like I said earlier, Small really improved towards the end of the season. So if he could keep it going next season on the ground, Tennessee could be trouble.
Yeah, I agree. Tennessee is definitely one of the teams in the East that I could see really stepping up. I could see Tennessee being that second or third place spot, especially seeing where Florida is now. I think Kentucky's going to be pretty competitive going forward, but I think Tennessee can even take it a step further than Kentucky can. I think Tennessee definitely has more potential, especially, like I said, if they can just get that defense to slow down offenses, that bend don't break. I think Tennessee can win a lot of football games. But with that said, we talked about the offense, the defense, and their previous season. I think it's time to give a final season grade. So, Aiden, I'll go ahead and let you start off. What would you give Tennessee for a postseason grade?
Going with the B minus. I like what Heupel's been able to do in just 1 year, especially with all the turmoil these last couple of years, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But with that said, still 7-6, not a great record, and you lost the bowl game to Purdue. Whether it was a rigged loss or not, you could, that Purdue team's good, but you could say that Tennessee shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. The defense it was non-existent that night, and had they made a couple stops, it would have been a way easier or an easier win. So with all that said, also the loss to Florida. So I'm going to have to give them a B minus.
Yeah, I also went with a B minus too. Had they have either won their bowl game or gotten that win over Florida, I would maybe even bump them up all the way to a B plus, because I think this was a really good season for Tennessee. I don't think anyone had high expectations with them, like you said, with the whole coaching situation going on, all the transfers leaving. It was just a bad situation for Tennessee after last season. And a lot of people, I mean, yeah, they went 7-6, but you got to look at their wins and losses. They had some good wins, and when you look at their losses, a lot of them came to some really good teams, and there's nothing you could really do in that situation. I don't think anyone really expected Tennessee to go out and beat Alabama, Georgia, or Ole Miss, and they almost did beat Ole Miss. Now, if they would have, say, had an 8-win season, 9-win season, I think it would have been a lot easier for me to put them at a B+. But I still think this is a really good season for Tennessee. I think this is kind of what they needed, because they did show signs of where they could be here in a couple years. Josh Heupel has to get a couple more recruiting classes in. I really hope Tennessee fans don't start to give up on him. If Tennessee, say, for example, does have another 7 or 8-win season next year, I don't think it's time to abandon ship or anything. They got to let Josh Heupel do his thing. And I think Tennessee in a couple years could be really competitive and maybe even challenge Georgia for an SEC East spot. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. Alright, y'all, that's pretty much it for this video. There's your final grade for the Tennessee Volunteers. Let us know in the comments what team y'all would like to see us do next. We have a schedule made, and we're going to upload a channel update here in a day or two. That way y'all can kind of follow along, and y'all don't really have to guess when we post videos, because we're going to be doing a series like this, and then we have another series for the NBA that we're going to start doing as well, and we're going to start uploading on certain dates. So just be on the lookout for that channel update. That way you guys are up to date and knowing when we're uploading these videos. Again, let us know if there's a certain team y'all would like to see us do next. We'll be doing a lot of these pretty much until summertime. We're not going to do every single college football Division I football team. We're going to do a lot of basically the bigger schools. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed the series, let us know in the comments as well. Please leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and we'll catch y'all in the next video. See you.